You're listening to The Angry Designer, where we cut through the industry bull to help frustrated graphic designers survive and thrive.
What's up, Angry Designers? Welcome. This is the episode that we've been waiting for, the episode that you've all been waiting for. Two awesome things. Number one, this episode is our 100th episode live. Wow, it's our 100th, right? We've actually made it through. We didn't even think we'd get past like 10, let alone 7. That magic number was 7. So we somehow or another, we persevered, we stuck to it no matter what happened. And this is episode number 100. And what better way to celebrate our episode, our 100th episode, with none other than the nicest guy in this industry. And I am proud to say he has been my mentor, as much as I could have had a mentor through this whole process. Everything I've done, my decisions, my outcomes have been due to this guy. So I would like to introduce Mr. Michael Janda.
Hey, thank you. When you messaged me and said it was your 100th episode, I thought two things. Number one, I thought, man, I'm super honored to be asked to be on your 100th episode. And the other thing I thought is, how the freak did you make it to 100 episodes? Because I was doing my podcast with Tom Ross. We did BizBuds podcast, and I'm just looking right now. We hit 63 episodes, 63 episodes, and that was it. It was like we were maxed out. It's such a commitment to keep going, and every single week, new topics, new conversations, new posting.
Absolutely.
So kudos to you. 100 episodes is big deal. It's a big deal. I didn't get there.
It's been fun. Well, no. But you've done so much more. So keep in mind, and I appreciate you being so damn humble. I appreciate that. And for the record, I loved Biz. I loved your podcast. I was sad when you guys took a break, but I got why. But I mean, you're doing so much stuff out there. I mean, your Instagram theme is, your YouTube videos are and the content you're putting out is just, it is the most valuable content in my opinion. There's a lot of people out there that we love, we follow, of course. I mean, again, the world isn't nearly as big as you'd think, but your shit's so much like our mission that we want to do, help people through these times. We're helping people emotionally, get through the struggles. You're helping them, the business side, like you're doing the stuff. It's just, when we would have our conversations and I'd ask you for help, and I was telling Sean this, it was, it's like, I'd ask you a question and just the answers would come out. And I'm like, how the hell did he know that so perfectly? You would pull out a pen, we would start mocking stuff up. And it's just like it's like you rehearsed it somehow. It's just, it's amazing. So it's just,
thank you.
It's amazing. So again,
thank you.
What? No, couldn't have anybody else helping this same flight that we are. Yeah, honestly,
thank
the
you.
place to say.
Yes. Super nice. So, yeah, I do have my hands in a lot of different channels and, but at the same time, I'm not running an agency anymore. And I look at people like you who I'm like, I didn't even try. When I was running my agency, I was like, I'm not doing social media. I'm not making a podcast. I'm like, I got so many fire drills every day. I'm not even going to try this tangent over here. So
sometimes it feels like you're spreading yourself.
It is. You are, because I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. So my whole life is content now. Fortunately. So it's you definitely, everybody's in a different phase, and you're with your sale of your agency and stuff and the things that you've gone through, you're entering into a different phase. We talked about that the last time you and I chatted. And this next phase has a lot of benefits that the last phase didn't, but you wouldn't have this phase if you didn't have the last phase. So it's just stepping stones. Yeah,
solely. And, being fortunate, and it's just getting to that point, right? But, and so as you know, the podcast, our mission is just to help graphic designers survive and thrive. We've all got through those tough times. And I know people looking into this world, they're like, oh, and these guys got it made. These guys like Michael Janda's got so many followers, or these guys hitting 100 on podcasts, but they don't know what it took to get here. And I think that's, the points that we want. I mean, I recommend everybody to go visit your YouTube channel, go visit your Instagram channel to get that information that, you hear most podcast people, debate on logos and brands and this and that. I kind of want everybody to realize that, celebrity status like you, but it wasn't always like that. right? Like you had to go through your hell. You had to go through, you know, like business struggles, life struggles, even from starting. I'm sure it wasn't all like, you know, rainbows and butterflies. Like we always say, right?
No.
So that's what I want this conversation to kind of be about. A little bit more of the grittier shit. You know, we don't have to get down and doom and gloom type stuff, but
it's like, angry. Do I have to get mad? It's the angry designer podcast.
Can you even get mad?
I can get mad. There are some moments that I got mad for sure. Maybe we should dig into those. Oh man.
I'd like to hear that.
That's good. Okay, let's start from the beginning. Let's start from the beginning. Okay. How did you even get into this game? Like, I mean, I know your early story, but it's like, you know, the university, the high school, you know, even before that. Let's talk about Michael Janda pre-design.
Yeah. So it was like, Sean, for me, there was no pre-design. I grew up and I was always art. Art was the thing. And fortunately my parents and all my brothers are creative, and my parents really worked to foster that. You know, at Christmas time comes around and you're getting a sketchbook and a pencil set.
Cool.
And collecting comic books and stuff was a big influence for me. You know, I was a big Marvel fan in the early 80s, and it's been fun to see all the movies bring it all to life now in the last 20 years. But, you know, it's my whole life. I got Marvel and superhero crap all behind me because that's what it was. So creativity and fantasy and all of that kind of stuff was always a part of my life. And when I went to college, I had planned I took every art class in high school, from ceramics to sculpture to drawing and all the stuff.
Right?
Yeah. It's the same story as so many designers. And I went to college and I entered into the business school because that's what all my friends were. And I didn't want to be a starving artist.
Yep.
And it didn't do well. And it was my freshman year and I was pledging a fraternity and I was flunking out of college because I wasn't passionate about this classes or school or anything. Anyway, after that summer, when I was on academic probation, my parents got me the book, it was Do What You Love, The Money Will Follow. And some people kind of rip on that concept, which I sit back and I'm like, I saw somebody posting about that. They were like, don't do what you love, the money will follow. You got to do something that's going to earn a wage or whatever.
No.
And you got to become passionate about the thing that is going to be marketable. And I thought, man, that's not what I did. It was passion. It was all passion around the thing that I love to do the most. And it was just get the creativity that's inside of me that wants to burst out. You know, like a designer, we feel sometimes like there's this thing in us, like an alien that wants to just explode out of our stomach, and you got to get it out of you. You got to get it out of you. And that's how I felt. And so I went into the art program in university and then started getting straight A's and loved my classes and teacher's pet and the whole deal, and graduated with great grades. And then I graduated and I started looking for a job and I couldn't get a job because my college portfolio kind of sucked and I had nothing to offer. You think I went to school 4 years and now I can't get a job. My first job was at Alpha Graphics, which is the copy store. Do you guys have that in Canada?
Yeah, actually, well, same kind of, I've seen the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
That was my first job. It was like the pre-press coordinator at an Alpha Graphics, which is like, a Kinko's shop thing.
Wow.
And that was the moment. I mean, it was a pretty low moment to me because here I had my degree. I thought I'm going to go and get a job at an agency and build my career and it's going to be great. And then I start at the very bottom of the creative industry. No offense to copy stores, but a college graduate working as the pre-press coordinator is pretty low start at a place where people come in and pay 10 cents for a photocopy.
It's a realistic start, though, and I think oftentimes people have these expectations, and we're seeing it. They come into a place like this, and they think they're going all the way up to art director on their first week because they were they're mid class or their teacher, their prof told them they were worth it. Yeah. But I remember in college you'd hear the same stories. People were like, "Wow, I'm doing mock-ups for like the Penny Saver newspaper locally, or it was a grunt work, and I think." that's that's a reality. I think
it's a
that
reality.
Most people need to realize. I don't like how schools are painting
it's
that.
the pay your dues thing.
Yes.
And you hear about it with
bones.
law students and accountants. The accountant, they get their job at the big 3, big 4, or however many big accounting firms there are now. And the story is that they're going to do their 80, 100-hour weeks to pay their dues. Same thing at a law firm. Okay, you get on. Now you're going to be the grunt for 100-hour weeks for the first couple years so that you can be on the path to becoming a partner someday. And designers, because our talent is a lot of times are people that are more talented than their level of expertise. They're like, so they've got an eye for it, but they don't have the emotional maturity to be an art director or leadership. They don't have the confidence level to be a creative director and sit with clients and sell them on ideas, but they can do the talent level work, but they still have to learn this soft skill stuff that you do have to earn it through the trenches of those first few jobs.
Right. Yes.
And so I think, some of these people coming out of college that have an amazing portfolio and a professor saying, oh, you're amazing, you're going to be an art director. And then they get into the real world and they start as a junior designer and they're miffed, like somebody did them wrong. Just they got to pay their dues like everybody else and wait for those opportunities to come and develop your leadership skills, understand how to manage a project scope and how to mentor other designers and, how to over the shoulder a designer without them hating you, that kind of stuff that you learn in the real world, in the trenches.
How did you get out of that spot? I mean, again, you're in a print shop, you're slinging this, you're slinging that. How'd you get out from there?
I got a credit card and I bought a Mac Performa 6400. The Mac Performa 6400.
6400. This is impressive. That was good.
I know, right?
That was 2-piece unit, right?
Yeah, it was $2,000. The monitor was, huge and heavy, and I got a bootleg copies of Adobe software, and because that was back in the day when you had to pay $500 per thing, $500 for Illustrator, $500 for Photoshop, and anyway, and I just cranked and self-educated. I would go to work all day, and then I'd come home, and we didn't have kids. My wife and I had just been married, and I would sit on the computer and learn crap. I learned web design, and this is mid 90s. Nobody knew web design. So I'm learning how to code sites and launch sites and stuff, and learning better Photoshop skills. I learned 3D modeling. Flash had just started to come out. So I learned some animation and, timeline based animation and stuff. And I didn't learn any of that stuff in college, but I learned it all because I didn't want to settle. When I had that first job, I was like, this isn't going to be what I'm going to do, man. I got the alien beast inside of me that wants to come out. I'm not going to be that person for my whole career, just grinding out at the copy store. Again, no offense to copy store people, but I wanted more than that. And so self-education was my way out. And it created a massive catalyst to growth in my career. 2 years later, I had creative director job at a little children's toy and book company in Phoenix. So
good job.
And then I parlayed that into getting a creative director job at Fox Kids in LA, because what I was doing at this toy and book company in Phoenix was so revolutionary. It was all Flash virtual world stuff. And this is 1998, 99, where nobody was doing that yet. And it landed me a job at Fox, and then Fox turned into freelance, and freelance turned into clients like Disney and Google and all that stuff because of my relationships from the people in Fox that I expanded over time.
And was this the beginning of Riser then?
Yeah, that was it. Yeah. So after Fox, I started freelancing, grinded for a couple years. I could have hired people in year one, but I was afraid, and I didn't have a mentor telling me, you're stupid doing all this yourself. Go hire some people. I didn't have anybody tell me that. So I try and be that person for a lot of people now. I help them through their hiring process and stuff, because that's something I'm passionate about. But it's, that was the start. And then finally it just got to be too much burden, and I started hiring. And, you know, from employee 1 to employee 5 was 1 year. And then to employee number 10 or 12 was another year after that. So once I like opened up my chest and let the alien beast come out, it was like, wow, okay, now we're on this, you know, exponential growth curve that I had. And then that was self-education also. Now I didn't know anything about business. How do I run a business? How do I manage my finances? How do I put in payroll? And what do I even do here? How do I write an employment agreement? You know, I didn't know any of that stuff. And so I had to learn all that in the trenches too.
Absolutely. So you said that shit didn't really start happening for you until you were like in this for about 20 years, right?
So I started freelancing. Let's see, it would have been 6 years after I graduated from university. I started freelancing. And then 2 years after that is when I started to get some growth. So 8 years from graduating.
From day one, right?
Yeah. So I was 30 when I started freelancing, about 32 years old when I started hiring, 35 when I think I had a dozen employees or so. And I sold my agency at 40 something, 42 or 43, something like that. Yeah.
The whole, which is the incredible run.
See, 7 years ago, I sold 7 years ago. So yeah. Yeah, so 43.
Early 40s. Yeah. So people, I mean, again, people are under this, all you see is that end result, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody always thinks it's an overnight success, but the reality is overnight success is usually somewhere between like 12 and 13 years. Yeah, like right.
Yeah.
Right. I think that was one of our first podcasts in the startup world. People see overnight success and they think that they just opened last year, but some of these guys have been slinging it for, 20 years until they started this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, people need to pump the brakes and realize what they have to learn until they actually get to that spot.
Yeah. And I think I just said this to my wife this morning, actually. I was like, I said something about how much I love what I'm doing now. You know, I love what I'm doing now, but I couldn't do what I do now had I not gone through all of the whole career of grinding out those early years when I had nothing to offer and I had a copy store job, and then grinding out the freelance and grinding out the agency growth and figuring it all out, and you were just talking about a big product crash that you had and you had to go through. I mean, I have all the stories of that, the server is down and the client is mad, and how do I solve this? And that's where all my stuff comes from now. All my ability, like you said when we were pre-chatting, was, when you ask me a question and I have stuff to share, it's because I went through all the crap that everybody can go through in this industry. Yeah. I've already been through it. And so the stuff to share, I don't have to research. I can just say, well, this is what I did. And one of the things that was a big deal for me was that every time I had an experience, good or bad, I started to think, okay, wait, why did that turn out good? And what's the system I can put in place to make it be good every time like that? Right. Or if it goes bad, wait, why did it go bad? And what system do I put in place to make it never go bad again? Yeah. And that's where every contract clause I ever had, every round and revision SOP that I've ever created, all comes from me either having success or getting screwed. Those are the two things. So,
having success or getting screwed.
Those are the two options.
Lessons.
So we want to replicate the success and prevent getting screwed. That's the whole mission.
Yeah. So what's funny?
Yeah.
No, please.
I was just going to say, and that's the business mindset. You have to look at your business that way and say, why, or your career in general. Why didn't I get that job? And what do I have to do next time to get it? What do I change? Because they didn't hire me, they hired somebody else. What do I change in my attempt to get a job? Do I need to tweak my portfolio? Do I need to tweak my interview skills? What do I need to learn to land it? Or, hey, I landed the job. I beat out all those other people. Why did I beat those people out?
Yes.
And how do I replicate that in the future?
Yes.
So do you think that enough people are actually paying attention to this kind of stuff? Because I kind of feel like the self-reflection thing is, people think self-reflection, you know, life, and they get all like high level and stuff, but they don't actually get to the grit of like what actually makes the difference. What is good? I have, you know, I've seen so many kids, and, you know, I've got nieces and nephews, and sometimes I'm scared to talk to them, because it's like, at a young age, when you tell them, you force them to realize what they're good at and what they're bad at. If you force them to what they're bad at, they're thinking you're putting them down and you're keeping them. And it's like, dude, no, this is just real. This is just freaking life.
Yeah. I don't know. I've been pushing. So I started writing my first book it was in 2007 when I started writing it.
Yeah.
And so that was 11 years into my career. And my whole book Burn Your Portfolio, was it was the lesson, good or bad, and how do I replicate that? All little systems and things. And it all came from that. And once I decided I'm going to start writing this book, then I started looking at all the granular of everything. Client screwed me on this. What's the lesson to learn, and how do I write that into a chapter in the book? Or just had an amazing win. How do I replicate that and put a chapter in the book? And so once I decided to start writing that, everything that happened to me became a lesson, good or bad. And I think that's a good recommendation for everybody. It's like, get a journal of some kind. It can be digital or it can be written. Get something and just start writing down your life lessons and see what happens. Because if you start paying attention to the things that happen to you on a daily basis, man, there's so many lessons that you can learn that you can start sharing in social media or on the Angry Designer podcast, or as a business owner, you can start sharing stuff. And then eventually you become the sage grandma or grandpa someday, sitting in your rocking chair, and you've got all the answers. Oh, little kitties, come over here. I'll tell you what to do, because I went through it, you know?
Stories.
Yeah.
This is how we managed to have them all like, oh, this is page 34.
That's what it's going to be. No, but it's true. And someday, if you want to become that, and everybody knows a grandma, grandpa type of person that's like that, like, wow, how are they so wise? I believe it's because they spent their life paying attention to the grit and learning the lessons from it, you know?
Brilliant.
Yeah.
The pricing structure, I love that idea. That sounds like a man who's been burned a bunch of times.
Oh, so many times.
And has come up with a way better solution to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the 30, 30,
when
30,
I don't
10.
Yeah, exactly. No profit. Yeah. Oh no. Yes. How am I not profitable on this? What did I not? Yes. Yeah. What did I not pay attention to? To when I priced it? Yeah.
Yes. That sounds like it was born out of a mistake.
Everything. You know what? It was a lot more mistakes. I had a lot of success, but I had a lot of failures along the way for sure.
And I think that was your point. It's like the kids are afraid.
You don't learn unless you fail. If you keep doing right, you're never going to keep adjusting.
Exactly.
It's when you fall that you realize, wow, what did I do to fall? How am I going to prevent that from happening again? And that's what people are so scared of. It's like, don't get me wrong. I'm not like this whole, failure movement. It's, you be a failure and
everybody gets a medal.
Everybody gets
everybody gets the trophy. Yeah.
Well, you have to actually learn from each one of these failures. It's not, you don't get a medal you don't get a medal for failing.
No,
you get a medal for getting up and making sure you don't make that same stupid mistake again and again and again. So example of like one of your biggest pricing mistakes that led you to this.
Oh, pricing mistakes.
Or not even a mistake. Shit. Well, you got burned.
So one of the things I'm really passionate about is phased structure, phased production, and phased billing. And not taking on somebody's money if I'm not doing a proportional level of work right now. And one of the times that I got screwed by this is that we had a client, and it was like a $60,000 project in the middle of the recession. So for me at that time, I was like, score, I need this so badly.
Right.
and they were paying us 10 grand a month. That was how we structured the thing. And we get through month number 1, they pay their 10 grand. Month number 2, they pay their 10 grand. Month number 3, they still haven't figured out some of their assets. They're still working on their stuff. They still working on the concept. Meanwhile, I have 30 grand of their money. Month 4, month 5, month 6, we're trickling into some work, but now I'm sitting on 60 grand worth of their money. And we had done 5% of the project, something like that.
Damn.
And then the whole
opposite.
thing blows up. The whole thing blows up. And they become difficult to work with. It was a family. They pooled some family money together to build this thing. And then they started having dynamics. And anyway, the whole thing blows up to the point where I'm like, we got to get out of this. Now, how do I get out of this thing? I can't do this anymore. And so I go, and this was the first time I ever talked with a lawyer in my whole business career. And I was like, what do I even do here? I'm willing to give them back all the money, but we have done some of the work, and how do I negotiate my way out of this thing? And so anyway, I ended up writing them a check for 54 grand and giving them the assets we had worked on.
Wow.
But during that whole run, I was paying my team and had my staff, and I had really spent their money waiting for them to start the project. And then I write the check to get out of the thing. That was one of my big wake ups. Now you'll see this in my content. I'm like, okay, we're going to set this up in phases. Phase 1, and we're going to bill according to phases. 50% of phase 1 at the start, 50% of phase 2 at the end of phase 1, and at the beginning of phase 2. We invoice there. And now we start phase 2. I have half the money for phase 2. We get to the end of phase 2. I bill for the end of phase 2 and the beginning of phase 3. Now it's just like balanced with the work completed. Because I don't want your money in my bank account if I'm not working on your crap. I do not want your money. And so sometimes people are like, oh, get 100% up front. Well, screw that, man. I never want 100% up front. I want a balanced engagement. They pay me, I do work. They pay me, I do more work. That's how I work. Because
that's brilliant.
That is
it
awesome.
prevents you from getting screwed by the stuff like that.
Everybody thinks that money solves all the problems, but you're right. I have similar situations, taken money, but all of a sudden their workload drops because there's shit that happens internally. And because I just use it as part of our internal retainer, and which goes towards the overall house bills, employees, this, that. When they get this shit together, I realize, holy cow, we owe them 300 hours and they haven't done shit. And now I owe them 300 hours. And it completely, it shifts the balance. I never even,
I hate that so much. I hate it so much.
You're right.
Keep it proportional to the work completed.
If you get 100% up front, it's like indentured servitude, right?
It is. I owe them.
Right.
I don't want anybody owing. I don't want them to owe me very long. I don't want to owe them very long. I don't want to owe them all those hours or all that time or all that scope. I don't want that. So that was one that was, and I had that happen. That I changed it. I changed my whole business model to this phased approach after getting screwed by that. And it prevents it 99% of the time. You still have some people who, they pay their first piece of phase 3 and you're sitting on their money, and then the crap hits the fan. But now I'm like, okay, now we're firing them and I'm keeping all the money from phase 1 and all the money from phase 2. And I got to send them $5,000 back for the beginning of phase 3. No big deal.
Much better than 54 or whatever it was before.
And it isn't because we did a bad job or they did a bad job. It's just like the project just blows up. Sometimes it happens. Good people and good agencies, sometimes the work just doesn't play out the way that everybody expects. And it's no fault to anybody. It's a wild adventure owning an agency, running a creative business. It's wild, man.
So, okay. So while you're on this crazy ride, right? And you're going now, once you figure your shit out and you go from freelancer, you've got these huge clients that everybody dreams about, and you're grinding, you're pushing, you're making it happen. What were some of the low points that you actually had to hit, like business wise?
a big low point was when the recession hit. So 2008, my first 7-figure year was 2007. And then 2008, between January and October, we had done like 1.4 million or something. And everything was rocking. And there were like inklings of recession. People were talking about it, about the housing market in early 2008 and stuff, but it hadn't hit business yet. And then October, it was like, honestly, somebody turned off the faucet. The phone calls stopped. I flew to LA and had all the normal meetings that I would usually have. And I had people who were like long-term clients and they just didn't show up. So now I'm sitting here going, wait, I've been working with this person. They're my friend. They've been here they've been a client for 3 years and they just don't even show up at the Starbucks where we're going to meet to powwow. It was stuff like that. And it was just this weird thing. And anybody who was working then felt it, but none of us knew that everybody else was feeling it at the time. Anyway, I kept my team employed for 6 months, kept payroll. I was like, it always has turned around. Every time I hit a slump, it always turned around. And then 6 months later, after I had spent $300,000 keeping my team employed, I ended up having to lay people off, and I drove home from the office. I had cut my team from, 12 to 6 or something like that in one day. Cried on the way home, the whole deal, because I just felt like the biggest failure. Even though I still had revenue. My revenue went from, we made like $700,000 or something in 2009. I had $17,000 in profit. It was my lowest income year since I had been like mowing lawns in college. But I still had a business. But I still had a business, and that was my whole mindset. I'd be like, still have a business. And, but it was a low year. And we just had we won a big award like in May. And I remember I went and accepted the award at this big black tie gala thing. And I'm walking out of the thing with my wife, and I'm holding this medal that we had just won. And I was like, I wanted to throw it in the trash. I was like, this is not even real, because my business is just like on life support right now. And we won based on the previous year's accolades, not the year we were in. Anyway, it was a low moment. But now looking back in hindsight, I learned a million gritty lessons in that. But I also look at it and say, okay, everybody was going through that. Every business. And my business was still alive. I saw so many businesses go under. There were big businesses that went under, like Mervyn's clothing store in Circuit City. Like the day the recession hit, October 4th or whatever, when the stock market starts collapsing, those businesses folded like a week later, man. They were gone immediately. There were so many. And so I somehow eked out keeping my business alive and staying profitable. So I was proud of that. And then we started to grow 2010, 11, 12. And then we started to have the record billings again and stuff. And we all pulled out of it. But it was pretty low. Low. And there's nothing you can do to avoid some of those low moments, because it had nothing to do with me. Even though I felt like I was a failure, it had nothing to do with my performance. It was literally an economic disaster that impacted everybody.
But now going on about this, so, obviously your business is down and you're feeling the weight of the world and you want to throw out these outlays. How that affect you personally through these times before you're able, like, again, because there's a low business and they're so tightly closed when we're passionate and empathetic like we are.
Yeah. You start to really reassess everything. I started to think, okay, well, what do I do next? I always would default to being like, well, I can be a fireman. That's where I go.
Well, you're a big guy, right?
I'm like, I can carry a body down the ladder. No problem. So, but that's where I go. And, I had paid off my house, so I had no personal cost of living. And I was like, you know what? If this is literally what I thought in March of 2009, I thought, okay, if I get down to where I only have a certain amount of money left. I think it was like, if I'm down to 30 grand left in my whole net worth, other than owning my house, I'm going to take my family. I had 2 kids, my wife at the time. and we're going to go fly all over the world for the whole summer because summer was coming. I was like, I'm going to go to Vietnam. I'm going to go to Japan. I'm going to go go see Europe and all this stuff. And then I'm going to spend all the money that I have left down to zero. And then I'm going to come back and I can just get a job as a fireman or whatever I'm going to do. And I actually, it was healthy because I actually got excited enough about the idea of traveling around the world with my family that I was like, hey, it's not so bad. I'm 35 years old. I got my house paid off. I know that's better than what most people have. I'm super grateful for that. And if I eat away all my savings, well, I'll just be like everybody else in the world with no savings. But at least I will have flown around the world and had this experience. Yeah. And lo and behold, when I got to that moment, March 2009 is when the floor actually happened in the stock market. That was the bottom, and things started to rebound over the next couple of years. But if you look at the stock market things, that was the bottom of the economic downturn. And that was my emotional bottom too.
Yeah. But it's amazing because it's the perspective that you had on the whole thing that's, almost carries you through what would have been the lowest points, right? And again, sometimes honestly, like even, when dates are tough, when we're working crazy ass hours, or we have, even the weird customers that are doing, asking for things that are unbelievable, or you're working an extra night or an extra weekend and you missed out on this or that. In the end of it all, it's like, we're still, perspective wise, we're still designing. We're still creative.
I love that.
We're not in a factory, and I have so much respect for factories, but I mean, we're not trying to struggle, in IC press all day long. We're not out doing lawns in the middle of the desert or shoveling snow in the middle of, again.
I dig in holes. That's my metaphor for what you're saying. Holes. We're not digging holes. Yeah, we're not digging holes. I was in San Francisco once, and I did a lot of business out of San Francisco, but we were walking down the street, going to a little restaurant or something, and there was this dude. I took a picture of this dude without him seeing, but he was a construction dude in a hole that was roughly twice the width of his body. And his head is sticking up out of this hole, and he's got this gray, frizzed out hair. Looks like Sean's beard, but it was sticking straight up off of his head.
Up on the top. Oh,
it was, And I was like, oh my gosh. It was a perspective. And I need to share, I'm going to share that photo soon.
I would love to see
that. Your life can be this. So let's have some perspective, because even on a bad day, you're sitting in an air-conditioned office playing in Photoshop. This is a bad day for you. This is a bad day for you.
I know.
I know, right? I pitch myself every day.
I know, right?
This is insane.
Again, we're so fortunate. So perspective makes really a huge difference. All right. So during this whole thing, right? Obviously, you're probably reaching out to people. I'm guessing you're asking for help, or you just internal. So worst advice you ever got? I want to hear that first. What is the worst advice you ever got business, whether it was during those times or in general?
It's not the worst advice. I don't think I ever got really bad advice from anybody. I did call one of my friends during that recession, and I was like, man, I'm down X hundreds of thousands of dollars in my net worth and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, he owns a business and he's been successful. He was my next door neighbor. And he was like, well, he kind of talked me through it a little bit. And then he said, well, I'm down 1.2 million. And I was like, okay. So that was good. And perspective has so much to do with it, Absolutely. And I was feeling woe is me for being down. Everybody was down half their entire net worth during that time. I don't care if you had 10 grand, you now had 5. If you had 100 grand, you now had 50. If you had 2 million, you now have 1 million. That was the phase that it was. But I was like, woe is me for where I was. But the reality is so many other people were worse off than me, and everybody was down. And so anyway, it was good advice, and back to perspective. But bad advice that I see sometimes, because you put this on in one of the emails. So I thought about it, and I've never really gotten bad advice, but I think bad advice for creatives is this idea of leveraging someone else's money to make your money. And real estate investors do this all the time. They borrow from the bank and they buy the property, and then that property goes up in value, and then they borrow the next thing, and then they buy the next property and stuff. And it can work in real estate, because real estate is a tangible asset that has value in the end. And it's almost one of the most, it's one of the most guaranteed investments that is on the face of the earth, that guaranteed, no matter what you buy a property for today, it's 99.999% that 10 years from now, it will be more valuable than what it is today. There's some exceptions to that, but almost 100%. Anyway, but I see people, and I had somebody who I was coaching who was asking about borrowing money so that he could hire employees so that he could fulfill some of these contracts. And I was like, man, don't do it. Don't do it. Scary. Don't do it on a creative business where the asset itself may or may not ever have tangible value that you can sell.
Yeah.
And just grind it out. And that was my advice to him. Grind it out. You're 2 months into freelancing and you've got a big load. Grind it out like everybody else did and save up the money and then bootstrap your business. That's the way that most creatives have done it. Is that what you did, Massimo? You did you
Dude, I can't even tell you how many 18-hour days or back to back 18-hour days, right? Where I literally pinching money. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I forego my own paychecks for, a month, 2 months, 3 months, just to make ends meet. Like, I think people forget that, right? Like, as an entrepreneur, of course, okay, maybe this is a little different than if you're an employee, but I mean, we have a certain sort of survival skills, right? And when things start going too well, people forget to rely on those survival skills, right? And they start getting too soft and they're too used to everything. So when panic sets in, they've forgotten what it used to take to make a fire, right? And so, man, I can't tell you. But I love that. And I mean, the grind is what I love, because that's the grit. That's the part. That's what makes us who we are. And that's what makes the best stories to tell your grandkids, It is. It's the grind. I love it too. I mean, I'm fortunate and financially in a situation where I don't have to work. Like I could be semi-retired right now, but I get up in the morning, I'm at my desk, I'm grinding out content. Saturday rolls around. Saturday rolls around. What am I doing? I'm like waiting for my wife to start doing something so I can sneak off to my computer and grind on something. That's what I'm doing. And because I love it so much. And so it's never worked for me. But the grind, it's you got to remember that you're not digging holes like we were saying. You're still, even on a grinding 18-hour day, you're still doing the thing that you actually really love it.
Boom. There you have it. The first half of our conversation with the one and only Michael Janda. This guy has got so much practical advice for everybody, whether you're in the space, whether you're a freelancer, whether you're an agency. I mean, he's been there, he's done it all, and the most incredible thing is he gives it all away for free. So if you haven't already, check out his Instagram, More Janda, and don't forget he's also on YouTube. So you got to check out his YouTube videos. They're awesome. Tons of free information, tons of motivation. This guy is so inspirational. And again, I'm so proud to say that he has helped me throughout the years, get me to a different place, help me get my agency to a place, and then of course was a huge motivation for us to start the Angry Designer podcast. Be sure to come back next week where we have part 2 of this awesome conversation with Michael Janda, where you're going to get more information, more advice, more tips, more inspiration, more Janda. And I'm sure there's going to be some more of Sean's laughs. And just that alone is worth coming back. Because, I mean, shit, those things, if anything's going to put you in a good mood, it's going to be Sean's laughs. All right, everybody. If you like what you heard today, please give us a review on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on Google, or whatever it is you listen to our podcast. Hit us up on our Instagram. We've got a great community there where we do have great conversations with people. We've got people messaging us for tips, dropping us questions. And don't be scared to reach out on our website. We've got a lot of people that are hitting us up directly on our website. We'd love to hear from you guys. You guys are the motivation on why it is we do what we do. My name's Massimo. Stay creative and stay angry.